Welcome to another episode of Mike's Money Picks. Today on the podcast, we have got another Friday night slate here in college football. We don't have any Tuesday, Wednesday, or Thursday night slates this week. We've got a decent old 3 games Friday slate. And so here in this episode, we're going to break down the week 2, Friday, September 5th, 2025 slate of college football for DFS, betting, and player props purposes. So no matter what action you're going to have on these 3 games, we've got you covered. And hopefully we're going to help you guys win some with this Friday night slate. I got to say, the 3 games themselves, they're not like my favorite slate in the world. Like, I personally love last Friday night slate, but this is far from the greasiest slate that we're going to see all season long. Like, just wait until the middle of October when we're playing Tuesday and Wednesday Conference USA between Kennesaw State and FIU, right? Like, this is not those. We do have an FCS team in action, which I'm not the biggest fan of, but other than that, we got 2 games where we've got some pretty clear angles we can take in DFS, and I do think that the knowledge we have on these teams is going to give us an edge. Now, before we get started, I do want to make sure that you guys know we're going to have college football content coming all season long, including live shows. We're planning on going live Thursday night here on the channel to break down the Saturday slate. So make sure you're subscribed to the channel so that way you know when those happen. And then also, if you're subscribed, you'll know when every single episode drops, because I'm going to be dropping for pretty much every single slate that I can. Our overview for the Saturday main slate is already live, and I'm hoping, no promises, to have one for the Saturday night slate here as well. But like I said, we got you covered all season long. Make sure you hit that subscribe button. And if you like what you're seeing here on the channel, make sure you hit that like button and spread the word as well so that we can continue to grow this community. All right, let's go ahead now and dive into game number 1, which I think is a really good game that's going to have somebody on upset alert. All right, so the first game of this Friday night slate is going to be James Madison heading to Louisville to take on the Cardinals. Is Louisville Stadium still Papa John's Stadium? I don't know if it is or not. I know Papa John had some controversy. I don't know if it still is. I know when I was in school at Charlotte, we went and played Louisville there, and it was called Papa John Stadium. So I don't know if it still is or not. Yeah, when I was at Charlotte, we played Louisville when they had Lamar Jackson. Go look up the box score of that game if you want to have a good laugh. Anyway, we've got James Madison taking on Louisville, right? The spread in this game is Louisville minus 13.5 with a game total of 56.5 points, meaning the implied score is about 35-21 in favor of the Cardinals. Remember, never decimal points in the implied scores here because you can't score a decimal point on real game. So personally, I think this is a place where I'm going to be betting JMU to cover the spread. James Madison is making a case to be one of the best group of 5 teams in the country. And if they win the Sun Belt, they want to be in consideration for that 12th playoff spot. If they represent themselves well in this game, not even win, then I do think that that's going to go well for their playoff resume. Kind of like Boise last year got credit for playing Oregon close, right? So I really think that this is a big spot for them. I think they're going to come ready for it, and they're going to be up for it, and they're going to play well. Also, I've mentioned here on the channel before, I coached high school football for 8 years, and one thing that I kind of took from that with me in terms of handicapping college football is back teams with good offensive lines. And I think James Madison, at least for a G5 team, has a really good offensive line. So let's go ahead and break down the James Madison Dukes offense. So in week 1, they beat Weber State 45-10. It's hard to learn a whole lot from that. They did have a rush rate over 60% in this game, which tracks last year. They were about 57%, which ranked 33rd in the nation. Now, here's the big news from this game. Alonze Barnett III, quarterback who had an ACL tear at the end of last season, did start the game against Weber State, put up 18.2 DraftKings points. He's only $4,500 on DraftKings. And the reason why is because a lot of people didn't expect him to play week 1 or anytime soon for that matter. A lot of people projected Matthew Sluka to be the starter. Matthew Sluka played for JMU head coach Bob Chesney when they were both at Holy Cross, and now they're reunited at James Madison. But what ended up happening was Sluka got used as a package player. And he came in, ran the ball in short yardage situations, had a rushing touchdown, came in later in the game, had a passing touchdown as well. And I think it fooled the DraftKings algorithm into thinking that Sluka is the starting quarterback when he's not. Barnett is the starting quarterback. And so what that turns into is that Barnett at $4,500 is like the value play of the slate, because you're getting a starting quarterback on an offense that's pretty good with a guy that's a pretty good dual threat himself. He also ran for 30 yards and a touchdown in this game. The only thing that would sway you away from playing Alonze Barnett is the fact that there's a non-zero chance that Matthew Sluka vultures some touchdowns. There's a non-zero chance that Matthew Sluka ends up coming in relief of Alonze Barnett if he struggles. So if that doesn't scare you at all, then Alonze Barnett should be close to a lineup lock here on this slate, in all honesty. And really, I got to say, Sluka's unplayable at 8,400. It would be a decision inflection point if he were down there at 4,500 and Barnett were 8,400. I don't know why DraftKings decided to do it that way. Like I said, I think the algorithm was fooled. But to me, Barnett is a really, really good play for his price. Yes, there's a non-zero chance that Sluka does come in and steal some of those fantasy points, but it's only like slightly more risk than what we saw last year with Drew Aller and Bo Perbula at Penn State, right? Like Perbula was coming in and playing Wildcat quarterback and vulturing touchdowns and putting up yards. And that didn't stop people from playing Drew Aller. So that's not going to stop me from playing Alonze Barnett here in this slate. I never lock players in college football. I just don't. Like, they're 18 to 22-year-old college kids. You never know when somebody's going to be a late scratch or, does something stupid to get benched for a quarter or something like that. So I never lock them. But Barnett's going to be pretty close to a lock for me. Probably about 80% of my lineups here on this Friday night. Now, at the running back position, I got to say, there's some names here on this JMU team, right? At running back, they've got Wayne Knight, a.k.a. Newman. If you've ever watched Seinfeld, which I realize is now like a 30-year-old TV show. So, yeah, they've got Newman at running back. He was their first running back in the game in week 1. He ended with 7 carries, 89 yards, and a touchdown, also using the passing game, 3 for 20. His usage was really, really good. And like I said, he was the first one in the game. Pettaway is probably the most talented player in the group. He's a North Carolina transfer. He ended up leading the team in rushes with 10 for 99. So those two guys are pretty much locked into pretty sizable roles on this team. I'm willing to roster both of them, but not in the same lineup. But I do think there's a place for both Pettaway and Knight. And like I said, they're both going to make my player pool. At the wide receiver position, here's where DraftKings got some pricing wrong as well. Michael Scott, the regional manager of Dunder Mifflin, he's priced at $3,000. He was the team's leading target earner with 4. The tight end Logan Kyle also saw 4 targets, but Scott was the target leader, and he was targeted early and often in this game. Did not score a touchdown. So he only ended up with 6.9 DraftKings points. But he's $3,000 and he was the team's target leader last year. He's certainly worth a look for your pools. In terms of the other receivers you're going to need to know, Isaiah Alston had 3 targets in the game, caught all 3 of them, scored a touchdown. So he's the one that's got the good looking game log. Like I said, the tight end, Logan Kyle, also saw 4 targets. He's $3,900. And then Landon Ellis. Where is Landon Ellis? He's also down here at $3,000. He had 3 targets as well. Also caught a touchdown. So really, I think any of those guys are playable because they're super cheap. And the way this game environment's going to work, with JMU projected to be 2 touchdown underdogs and still projected to score 21 points, they're going to have to throw a little bit. And I do think that all of those guys I just mentioned, between Alston, Kyle, Scott, and Ellis, they're all in play for me. They're all probably going to make my player pool, and I think you can ignore everybody else on that list. Now, on the Louisville side, they're interesting. They played Eastern Kentucky in week 1, FCS team. They beat them 51-17. It's not bad. It's hard to learn anything from that game, though. Louisville was a pretty pass-happy team in 2024, and they were 42nd in the nation in pass rate. The Jeff Brom offense tends to be pretty heavy in pass rate, so that's not a surprise. Now, their quarterback is Miller Moss. He's a transfer from USC, if that name sounds familiar. He didn't look great in week 1. Only completed 68% of his passes, only put up 17.7 DraftKings points. He actually has the distinction of he threw 2 interceptions, but he apparently had no turnover-worthy plays. I was not watching this game because I was watching much better college football games than that one in week 1, but I don't know how that's possible where he had 2 interceptions, but yet none of them were classified as turnover worthy. Maybe his receivers did him really dirty with drops or something like that, but just not a great overall stat line in week 1 for him. But you know that this team is going to score points. They're projected to score about 35, and you know that they're going to throw the ball. And so you've got the quarterback for that team as an option. Now, he's not really a dual threat. He's not really all that mobile. So if you're playing him, you're going to want to play him stacked with at least one of his receivers, but he's definitely one of the top quarterback options on the slate. At the running back position, there's 2 names you're going to need to know. It is Isaac Brown and it is Duke Watson. They were their running back tandem last year. Brown is the 1A, Watson is the 1B, but last year they were both incredibly efficient over the course of the season. Both averaged well over 5 yards a carry. Both are very explosive players who can break off a long run at any time, as shown by what they did in week 1. Isaac Brown only needed 6 carries to get the 126 yards, scored on 2 of them. Longest was a 68-yard run. He's the best running back play on the slate. He's going to be seeing a lot of my lineups, especially because you're afforded a lot of salary if you're putting in Barnett at quarterback. And then Duke Watson, I think, is a great pivot from playing Isaac Brown. He only saw 2 carries against Eastern Kentucky, but he did catch a pass out of the backfield, of which he scored on. So if you're, looking to play GPPs, you're looking to play the leverage game. Hey, where can I be different? Where can I, get points on somebody? Fading Brown to play Watson would be a way that you could do that, and it also save you a little bit of money as well. Next up at the wide receiver position, the Jeff Brom wide receiver 1 has been just a super lucrative position over the course of the years. I mean, just look back at Purdue. You had Rondale Moore, Charlie Jones, and then at Louisville, you had Jamari Thrash, Ja'Cory Brooks. Like, there's just so many guys that have been in that role that you just play every single week in DFS because you know they're going to score a ton of fantasy points. And so we're trying to figure out who that wide receiver 1 is going to be. There's really only 2 nominees for me, and it's Colin Lacey and it's Chris Bell. There's another name I'll mention. Chris Hughes last week is $3,000. He tied for the team lead in targets with 6. However, he did this while running with the second string. There was a lot of garbage time in that game. So I'm not interested in him, but I think the game log chasers might go take a look at that. That's one I think I've really gotten better at this over the course of the years. This is my 4th college football season of doing this show. And back in my younger days, I would see that out of Chris Hughes and I'd be like, "Ooh, $3,000, 14 DraftKings points, 6 targets, click." But now I'm kind of wise enough to realize that, hey, he did that with the backups because this game was a blowout. So I'm not chasing that. I'm not going to fault anybody who does, but I'm not chasing it. I'm looking at Bell and Lacey, who also had 6 targets each. What they did with them was pretty similar. I mean, Bell went 5 for 63, whereas Lacey went 4 for 62. So yeah, like I'm willing to play both of them. Lacey also returned a punt for a touchdown, I believe. So I really am in on both of them, and I don't really want to play both of them in the same lineup. Like, I think you're really limiting the upside if you play both of them. I really just want to hope to catch lightning in a bottle and catch the right one. I lean Lacey because we saw him do it in his days at South Alabama. That would be my guy for this offense. But again, I'm not faulting you if you click Bell. And sure enough, now that I said that I pick Lacey, it's probably going to be Bell that goes off. Who knows? Also, Dakari Collins, he's an NC State transfer. He was listed as a starter, but he ran with the 2s in that game against Eastern Kentucky. That's a red flag to me. Trayshawn Hurry did run with the starters, but only caught 1 pass. It was on the first drive. So maybe there's something to that, the fact that he did run with the starters as opposed to Collins or Hughes. All right, that does it for game number 1. Let's go and take a look at game number 2. We've got Northern Illinois, the Huskies, taking on the Maryland Terrapins. Maryland is 17.5 point favorites in this game with a game total of 46.5. The implied score in this one is 32 to 14.5. Maryland in favor of Northern Illinois. This is a stay away from a betting perspective for me because these are 2 teams that are really weird handicaps, right? So Northern Illinois, their starting quarterback is Jack Holst. He is okay for a MAC quarterback, I guess. He wasn't really all that effective against Holy Cross. They only scored 19 points against Holy Cross, and they had a return touchdown. So they didn't score a whole lot of offensive points in this game. Holst only threw for 101 yards. Didn't throw for a touchdown. Not great. He is a runner. He started the bowl game for them last year and had some pretty good rushing performances. Only 8 for 11 in game 1, though. It's not a great stat line. There's not a whole lot here. Look, this team's going to look to run the ball, like run the crap out of it and grind clock. That's how they're going to try to beat teams and play good defense. Holst, I'd just rather play Alonze Barnett at 4,500 than play Holst. On a small slate where you've got 5 FBS teams, he might make my player pool, but I'd rather play Barnett. At the running back position, this is where I'm going to get my exposure to Northern Illinois. Telly Johnson in game 1 had 21 carries. Now, the haters would say it only went for 67 yards. But look, we're talking 21 carries. That's significantly more than anyone else on this slate got in week 1. And there's something to be said for knowing that a guy is going to get a ton of touches, right? Like, it just gives you a safe floor. It gives you a lot of opportunities that if he breaks off a long run or if he falls in the end zone, he's going to instantly hit value for that price tag. So I love me some Telly Johnson this week. Their second running back is Siobhan Wright. He's a transfer from Charleston Southern. He was more effective than Telly Johnson in week 1. He only had 11 carries, but he went 77 yards on them, scored a touchdown. So he's going to make my player pool big time as well. Much like with the Louisville situation, I'm probably not going to play them both in the same lineup, but they are both going to make my player pool because they are cheap, and this is a team that is going to run the football. Jalen Poe is your third running back, but he's primarily a pass catcher, caught 5 balls for 24 yards in week 1. The interesting part about week 1 is that only one wide receiver caught a pass from Jack Holst, and it was De'Ari Rogers. 7 for 73 in that game, was the team's leader in targets, obviously. And he's $3,000 on DraftKings. I think that's a great price. I think that even though this offense is probably going to be so constipated through the air, this guy having like a 40% target share is enough to get me invested at $3K minimum salary. And I am probably not targeting any other receiving option on this Northern Illinois team. Let's talk about Maryland now. So Maryland, they blew the doors off of FAU in week 1, 39-7. Now, granted, that game really got out of hand quick. It felt like it was quite close for most of the first half. And, I was watching Texas, Ohio State, obviously, but I felt like I kept checking the score, checking my phone, and FAU's playing them close. FAU's playing them close. And then all of a sudden it's like, what? That game's a blowout. And part of it was because of Malik Washington. I thought he played quite well against FAU. 27 of 43, 3 for 3 touchdowns as well. No rushing attempts, so he's not going to give you rushing upside, even though the dude is pretty athletic. Here's the deal. Maryland was up 30 points in this game. They were still having Malik Washington in the game, and they were still having him throw it. So I'm not concerned about him getting pulled early. I am not concerned about them sitting him for garbage time. I'm not concerned about them turning into a handoff machine at the fourth quarter, right? Like, this is a team that's going to be aggressive. They're going to play fast. They're going to continue to throw the ball. And so that makes him, in my opinion, the number 1 quarterback option on the slate. The one concern I have with Maryland, and I think this actually plays into Washington's favor, I don't think they're very good on the offensive line. The snippets that I saw of that FAU game and looking at what they did from a rushing attack perspective, I don't think their offensive line is great. And so I think they're going to have to go with this dinking and dunking offense. I don't think they're going to be able to run the ball, even against the likes of Northern Illinois. Nolan Ray was the starting running back. He had 8 carries for 25 yards against FAU. It's not great. DeJuan Williams was the second running back that entered the game, 10 for 54. We should be expecting better than that going up against an FAU team that is not going to be very good defensively. I think FAU will probably be like a 6-6, like barely bowl eligible team out of the American, but they're not a good defensive team. And they were able to defend the run against both these guys pretty well. To me, it's a hard sell for both these guys. I would way rather pay up for the likes of Isaac Brown from Louisville or pay down for Petaway and Newman. Wayne Knight from JMU than kind of play the middle options with Nolan Ray. At the wide receiver position for Maryland, Jalil Farouk was a core play for me in week 1, and I'll stand by it. This was a team that threw the ball a ton. He led the team in targets with 7. He just only turned it into 8.3 DraftKings points. That sometimes you run unlucky with that, but to me, that makes this a really good buy low spot. I expect this team to have a lot of success passing the ball, and I expect a lot of those passes to go Farouk's way. He's going to be my primary target. Now, digging deeper beneath the box score, the other guys who ran with the starters and caught passes were Dorian Fleming, the tight end, Caleb Webb, and then Shalik Knotts. Knotts was the one that had the most success. He went 5 for 59 and 1 in that game on 6 targets, which was second on the team. So I really think he's the guy that I would probably be looking to target over the others. But Farouk is going to be my primary target in the receiving game here in this one. Octavian Smith rotated in. I think he's overpriced. He was not running with the starters as much as the likes of Webb and Knotts. So to me, my exposure is going to be Farouk 1, Knotts 2 here for this Maryland passing attack. All right, that is 2 games in. Let's go ahead and take a quick breather, and then we're going to finish it on it. Now, before we continue, I do want to mention there are places where you can get more information from me. First off, you can find me on Twitter at Mike's Money Picks. I am more than happy to answer any questions that you might have if you reach out to me. And I'm also tweeting out all updates for the show on there as well. If there's anything that comes out like a depth chart or anything like that that's contradictory to what I say on here, I try to give an update on Twitter. Last week, I was actually pretty good in terms of the depth chart stuff, but there's teams that didn't really always follow the depth chart or didn't play out. But for the most part, the things we talked about on the show ended up being pretty accurate. But if it's not, I try to get it updated on Twitter. I'm also in the Fantasy Corner Discord. The link is in the description. If you are looking for a community of people to be a part of where you can talk DFS strategy, talk plays, talk ownership, stuff like that. It's a great place to go. If you're also looking for just a bunch of guys to, chat about the games with and sweat it out together, it's also a great time for that. I genuinely enjoy being a part of it every Saturday, and kind of the inside jokes and the memes and the tilting is just very entertaining. And I would really, really recommend, if you're looking for a community of DFS people to be a part of, Fantasy Corner Discord's the place for you. And then also, if you want to know who actually makes my DFS lineups, head on over to the Patreon, patreon.com/Mike's Money Picks. Post my core plays for every single college football DFS slate, is including an article why and kind of going over my whole slate plan as well. So if you want to check that out, head on over to the Patreon. All right, let's go ahead and talk now about the last game, which is going to be an FCS game. Yay. I hope you can tell the complete lack of enthusiasm for me. This is the first FCS team we've seen on the slate this year. I was really thinking DraftKings did away with it. And it's nothing against FCS football. I'd really like their playoff system. I think that there's a lot of good teams, a lot of good players, a lot of good coaches in FCS football. But I don't like having to research a team that I'm only going to use for one day, and then I'm going to have to do it again in 365 days. I like the knowledge that I get on teams playing and doing these shows week in and week out, and having to research and use FCS teams for one game does not help with that. That's just my viewpoint. Like I said, it's nothing against FCS football. I watch FCS football when it's on my TV, but for a DraftKings slate, it's not my favorite, just me being honest. Now, for this game, because it's FBS versus FCS, we don't have a betting line on this game yet. So I had to use SP Plus from Bill Connolly, ESPN. Big time recommend using that for things like this. And they had it as Boise 46-15. So that would be a total of 61 points. It would have Boise as the largest favorite on the slate and the highest team total on the slate. Let's talk about Eastern Washington. So they lost to Incarnate Word 31-21 in week one. Is it Incarnate Word or Incarnate Ward? I mean, it is Word. I'm looking at it right now. It's WORD, but I feel like I want to say Incarnate Ward. Incarnate Word. Incarnate Word. They lost to Incarnate Word 31-21. They had a 63% pass rate in that game. Their quarterback is Jared Taylor. He's got some rushing upside too, 10 carries, 31 yards, and a touchdown in that game. Look, if you think Eastern Washington has a little bit of offensive success, they certainly couldn't defend mobile quarterback Byron Brown in week one. So if you think that this team scores 2-3 touchdowns, there's a good chance he puts one up. I'd rather play Alonze Barnett. At the running back position, they've got Marcise Yeats. What a name. He's the running back one. He was also the team's leading receiver. He caught 7 passes for 63 yards, scored 2 rushing touchdowns. He's a really good FCS player, just from what I can gather from that stat line. But it's a different animal going against the Boise defense. You're hoping playing him would be that Taylor, who did this in week one, will continue to check down to him and get him a ton of PPR points. And he can just be like an Alvin Kamara PPR merchant of FCS football. And he can, kind of give you value at 5,100 by having a lot of catches. That would be your only hope. And the wide receiver position is kind of rough. The ones who caught passes that I'm actually considering targeting, Branch, Cronquist, and Ulm. Those are the only wide receivers who caught passes. I don't know a whole lot about this team. I'd be lying to you if I said I felt compelled to do more research on them, because I'm being totally honest, like, there's cheap wide receivers on the other teams too that aren't FCS teams. All right, now let's talk about Boise. So Boise got thumped in week one, 34-7 by South Florida. And in that game, they exhibited a much higher pass rate than they did last season. Obviously, life without Ashton Genty, right? Maddox Madsen threw the ball 46 times in that game. Only threw 1 touchdown. Lost a fumble. 15 DraftKings points. Not great, bub. But now he's going up against an FCS opponent. However, it's my guess that they're really going to want to get back to the ground game in this game, because the ground game did not have a lot of success in week one against South Florida. Who does that benefit? Sire Gaines and Malik Sherrod. They ended week one as basically a 50-50 split. Sherrod had 11 carries. Gaines had 9. Gaines was a little more successful. What did help both of them is that Jambres Dubar was out for that game. So it was only Gaines and Sherrod that you had to worry about. And if that's the case here for this one, if Dubar is out again, then you could see Gaines and Sherrod play deep into this game, which would be quite helpful from a DFS perspective. Much like what I've said about the other running backs on this slate, I don't think I'm playing either of them or like both of them in the same lineup. but I do think both of them are going to make my player pool. If I had to pick one, it would be Gaines. I just think he's a better player than Sherrod from what I've seen. At the wide receiver position, the good news is Boise last week, they kept a pretty condensed target tree. Like they had a few randoms come in and catch a pass like once or twice. But for the most part, it's pretty condensed. It's going to be Latrell Caples. It's going to be Chris Marshall, who caught their first touchdown, only touchdown. And then it's going to be Matt Lauder at the tight end. If you go down all the way, you got Ben Ford, who also caught 4 for 44. He is only $3,000. He's kind of like a package player that comes off the bench. I think there's better plays, but he's going to play, and he's only $3K, and he's going up against an FCS team. You could do worse than that. But really, Caples and Marshall are going to be where I focus my attention. Marshall was, I feel like he did all his damage on the first drive. I think he caught both of his passes on the first drive and the touchdown, and was really not really used after that, which has me wondering if there could be an underlying injury or something. I haven't read anything, but it's a non-zero chance, right? But the bottom line, here's what you got on this slate, y'all. If you play Alonze Barnett, right, and you play another, just one cheap skill position player, I mean just one. So you could play Knight from JMU. You could play Scott from JMU. You could play the receiver Deary Rogers from Northern Illinois, right? Like if you just play one of those guys, here I am plugging all three of them into the lineup. If you just play one of them, you've got enough salary to do whatever you want on this slate, if we're being honest, right? So if I go ahead and exit the two of them out and just have Barnett and Rogers, I got $7,000 remaining salary. So I can play pretty much whoever. Boom, Isaac Brown. I didn't want to put him at Superflex. Hold on. Let's put Malik Washington at Superflex. Let's do Isaac Brown at running back. And I've got 6,300 left, and I can pretty much do whatever I want, right? So if you're willing to play Barnett at quarterback, my general straight strategy, looking at it here on a Wednesday night, assuming that Barnett's going to start, is play Barnett, pick your favorite cheap guy, and then build your lineup from there. That's going to be my general logic here for this slate. Like I said, it's only Wednesday night, though. The slate's on Friday, so it could obviously change. But that is going to do it here for this episode. That is our breakdown of the Friday night slate. If you enjoyed it, make sure you hit the like button on YouTube. Make sure you rate and review if you're listening on audio. And make sure you subscribe to the channel. That way you can be with us for the rest of our content for the rest of the college football season, including the live show tomorrow night, including hopefully the night slate show for Saturday night at some point this weekend. Might not get to it this weekend because it is my daughter's second birthday. And she's having a big party on Saturday, and we've got a ton of family coming into town. So there are going to be house guests here, and I don't know if I'm going to be able to record, but I hope to get those shows out to you guys. And yeah, so if you're subscribed, you'll know when they drop. But other than that, I'll be back for week 3. If not, if we don't get to a week 2, we'll certainly get to a week 3 or sometime in the future. But that is going to do it here for this episode, y'all. Hopefully we gave you guys all the information you need in order to build some winning DraftKings lineups here for the Friday night slate. The Saturday main slate video is already out, so go check that out if you have not already. But best of luck to you guys here on this slate. Thank you guys for watching us to this point, and I will see you guys next time.